a few housekeeping items. We have muted all participant lines to maintain sound quality throughout the session. But we do encourage you to ask questions, and please do that by placing them in the chat at any point. You are welcome to chat any of our specific panelists or the group in general. We will do our best to address all of your questions either during the session or during the Q&A portion of the event. This session is being recorded and will be sent via email within 48 hours of the session's conclusion, as well as available on the Manufacturing Leadership Council website within about 5 to 7 business days. And now I would like to introduce MLC's founder, David Brossell. And David, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Lauren. And good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Future of Manufacturing Project webinar for today. 4 years ago, MLC launched the Future of Manufacturing Project based on a simple but important goal: to give you the opportunity to take some time away from your busy day-to-day schedules, to think long-term and explore how you might improve your operations in the future. Today, we will discuss key takeaways from our Future of Manufacturing in-person event held this last month in Orlando, where our focus was on AI-centric factories of the future. As I said in Orlando, we are in a global competition for AI supremacy, and manufacturing needs to lead the way in its responsible use. Like in prior years, the Future of Manufacturing project is ongoing. So look forward to a series of webinars, research, and discussions over the coming months. The project would not be possible without the support and involvement of our Future of Manufacturing project partners: NTT Data, Kalypso, a Rockwell automation company, Accenture, West Monroe, and Invisible AI. Many thanks for your support and involvement in the project. Now, please allow me to turn the webinar over to Steve Moskowitz, who is MLC's Senior Content Director for Events, who will moderate today's panel. Steve, the floor is yours.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Lauren, and thanks everybody for joining us today. As David said, our Future of Manufacturing project is an ongoing project. You will see more events through the year, but today we want to talk about what happened about a month ago. So with that, given the limit of time we have, we're going to just jump right in. So I'd like to welcome our panelists. We have the Director of Consumer and Industrial Products at West Monroe, Kris Slozak, the Managing Director and Business Transformation Leader at Accenture, Parthiv Shah, the Director of Business Strategy at Invisible AI, Phillips, the Field CTO at Kalypso, a Rockwell automation company, Sachin, Misra, and finally, the Chief AI Officer at NTT Data, Wendy. Thank you all for joining us. Look forward to a great conversation today. For folks on the call, please, if you have questions, add them into the chat or the Q&A. We will try to get to them throughout the conversation. Anything we don't answer directly, we will make sure we follow up with you. So please don't hesitate to ask questions as they come up. So before we start with some questions, let's get your reflections on what you thought about the conference. What were some of your key takeaways and key insights? I'm going to go by how I see it on my screen here. So Wendy, I'll start with you.
Sure, thank you. Well, I really enjoyed attending the workshop, and there were some really thought-provoking topics. I think what had me most excited was to see individual manufacturers using AI for what I call higher order value creation opportunities. So specifically, the one that I was most intrigued by was the use of AI in the product design process. So that was a fantastic talk.
Excellent. Kris.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Steve, here. I'm going to walk away with 3 key messages. The first not being anything really new, but just a very interesting way of how it was phrased, and that is AI is a proven technology, just maybe not in your application. I thought that it was catchy. I thought it appeals to my kind of cautious optimism, But we do tend to look at AI as this shiny new thing, and really we were able to look at data. We were able to go back and understand that really we've been at AI for a long period of time, and it is a proven capability. We saw various forms of AI compared to human capabilities, and we see that all those forms are either at or above, the human capability. And I think that was really refreshing to kind of see that with data. Other kind of key takeaways I had really around the importance of change management. And this is something near and dear to my heart because I often see this as an area of underinvestment when working with clients. And it was really interesting how this came up throughout the day, throughout the conference, and the various conversations that were going on, talking about people, culture, communication, really how we need to educate up and down the organization, how we need to listen to the organization, how leaders really need to step up and really walk the talk. And then really the last thing I'll kind of leave you with is, you are not alone as a manufacturer. If you look at the US manufacturing, 98% of manufacturers have less than 100 people. And it was really refreshing to hear our guests, our panelists talk about, the need for manufacturers to really rely on the knowledge base that exists, the funding that may be out there. Certainly I'm sitting on a panel with other professional service providers, and we'd love to help, but there are also other great organizations out there that really can assist, like DARPA and SESME.
Excellent. I appreciate the feedback. Adam.
Yes, thanks, Steve. Thanks, everyone, for having me. I would say underpinning everything was really this common thread of change management and how critical that's going to be as a foundation. I don't think we can overemphasize that. And then I think that for me, a lot of the offline discussions really revolved around, and I would summarize it using a quote from Steve Jobs, where he said, if you define the problem correctly, you almost have the solution. And so I was very intrigued and optimistic hearing people talk about their problem sets, specifically offline and obviously on the panel as well, too.
Excellent. Parthiv.
Yeah, I guess thank you, Steve, for having me. And as I look back on our session in Orlando, I recall us talking about the AI-centric future of fully autonomous operations. But more importantly, as I talked to the fellow colleagues, I saw people already on that journey, people establishing the digital core. I even have one of our colleagues had a factory running for 4 to 6 hours, fully autonomous. And then just one last reflection, I was at CES, and the focus on physical AI that I see the vision that we laid down is already in motion. And I see that, in next few years, we should be able to achieve. So it was very, satisfying to see not only we discuss the vision, but have examples of our colleagues and the technology progressing to make it happen. So it was very, very fulfilling.
Excellent. Good feedback, and good to hear you were at CES. Look forward to hearing more about that another time. And finally, Sachin.
Thanks for having me on, Steve. And I largely echo what everyone has said, but one of my key takeaways watching all the different presenters talk about their experiences is the level of interdisciplinary collaboration to realize the full potential of AI. I think there were several speakers that had mentioned working across multiple aisles to be able to bridge that gap that has traditionally existed in terms of how do you actually generate value when it really takes a village, right? So engineers coming together with data scientists, coming together with business P&L holders. So that was very encouraging to see, is that level of that level of collaboration. I think the other kind of key takeaways for me personally were the emergence of some really good thinking around maturing data literacy and governance. And it was very interesting to see how I think every speaker touched upon it in a slightly different fashion, but it was good to see that all of the data that's available, not just from manufacturing, but upstream processes that contribute or shape how manufacturing executes, like supply chain, getting integrated into that AI-based conversation. So those were some key takeaways. Was of course, we're here to talk about AI in manufacturing, but good to see a lot of the sister organizations, if you will, also participating in that.
That's great feedback. And again, for those who aren't aware, the day before the MLC's event, the IRI, our sister org, talked about innovation for the future and AI in the innovation space. So again, as Sachin said, this goes across the enterprise, across the supply chain. And then one thing that was a common thread in the introductions was the people side, right? We can't do this. This is not a technology alone challenge. This is a people and change challenge. When we kicked off the session, our keynote speaker, Michael Bennett, shared some of his top trends and things that he sees coming for AI, and I'll just touch on them briefly. One of them is thinking, as we think about AI, we tend to focus a lot in the news on Gen AI and large language models. He said, there's things beyond there, other transformer technologies. Parthiv talked about some of the physical AI, so there's a lot going on beyond the Gen AI space. Agentic AI is obviously one of the next big things we see. Local AI winters, where there's going to be investments in certain areas, which means there's not going to be investments in other areas. Data architecture, including data governance, is critical, and responsible and ethical AI. So those are some things that we continue to hear throughout the day. I just want to dive into one of these topics briefly before we go into the individual sessions, and that's really as we think about Gen AI and large language models. How do we start to really focus on some of the other things? So Parthiv mentioned that there's work going on in physical AI, images, videos, chemical structures. What are those opportunities for things beyond kind of the large language models that are in the news and in our face today for manufacturers? Adam, maybe we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I would say for starters, I'm a little bit biased towards video, basically digitizing the physical world. We envision a future where digital twins will only become a reality using video as the sensor, as the primary means of collecting that data, organizing that data, and then applying AI models with other data on top of that. So from my point of view, there's a lot of things going on in the space right now. If you saw NVIDIA's announcement around Digits, this device, and the entire tech stack that's going to sit behind that, including some pretty amazing partners and a whole ecosystem around that. There's going to be a lot of experimentation on those devices on building these multimodal models. And I think that the concept of AI winter the antidote to that is having the right partners in the mix. Manufacturers should be focusing almost exclusively on their problem sets, in my opinion. So they should, from a lean manufacturing perspective, really understand what's going on the shop floor, and then working with partners that have that expertise and all of the moving parts and all of the pieces that exist there. Everything from helping break down the data silos. We heard about that a lot at the conference, and bringing that data into one place. Legacy systems, new systems, all of that jazz, I think, is really, really important to have someone who can have an outside-in look, where you really lean on the domain expert of the manufacturing to understand their problem sets and their customer bases, and then use and leverage other folks for that. So there's a lot of exciting developments going on, and I think that we're going to see it move faster than we ever imagined it would. I think that Moore's law is still very much a reality, and maybe it's not just in the context of compute, but in the context of the gold rush that's happening with people bringing picks and shovels and selling Levi jeans into the space. And I think manufacturers can really look towards good partners to be able to bring the transformation that they need.
Good feedback, good insight. And Parthiv, you had mentioned that you were at CES. So building on what Adam shared around video and what's coming, beyond kind of our current technology and partners, what did you see, and kind of where are you seeing this go in terms of what's beyond our language models?
Yeah, so I would say 2 or 3 things. So just to build on what Adam said, right? Whether it's video or other models, we see, back to physical AI, focus on robotics and being able to bring that humanoid robotics, or even optimizing around assets to drive value to manufacturing, and even other areas like logistics and so forth. So I see, whether it's investment with NVIDIA or other partners, right? We see this coming to life, and this is not a futuristic value prop. This is here, like this year and next, right? That's where we see the focus. But speaking along the lines of technology, I also see back to your point around LLMs, right? The technology itself will evolve. Like, for example, in 24, there was, move beyond transformers to like Mamba or other architecture. But I guess in layman's terms, right, if you were to, I think that would allow us to go beyond LLM into what is called, small language model. In other words, allowing from a manufacturing or supply chain perspective, edge solution, real-time predictive maintenance, as an example, right? So I think these, what we used to be calling the futuristic scenarios, are here. And then to add to your point around AI winters, I don't think there will be a true AI winter. AI is here and is part of our life. The only thing I would say is we should think of AI in terms of automation continuum. That's what we tell our partners and our colleagues, that we evolve from all the way from RPA to Gen AI to agentic AI to AGI. But this is an automation continuum. So I think having that awareness to apply the right solution, right, or the right automation solution or AI solution would be very important. But I think AI is here to stay and will become stronger and stronger with the examples of the value cases I just told. So
yeah, I think one of the things you mentioned is important, right? We want to make sure we're using the right tool for the right problem. And I think we tend to fall sometimes into the trap of having that silver bullet that Kris, you had mentioned, right? Gen AI is that silver bullet for everything. But we know there's a whole suite of AI solutions out there. Kris, Wendy, Sachin, anything to add?
What I would add, Steve, is just kind of build upon what Parthiv and Adam mentioned, is this notion of advanced pattern recognition, right? Whether it's modalities like real-time video analysis and so on. I think ultimately the ability to process multiple variables that affect any kind of manufacturing process and be able to arm the humans with the right decision intelligence, that to me is where the most value will be generated. We're doing work with a handful of forward-thinking companies that, for example, working with a retailer that has a large set of centralized distribution facilities, and this is based on real-time POS data coming in from their retail locations. And what's amazing is the level of control they can have over their AMRs at the warehouse integrated to their ASRS that is actually interpreting inbound supply signals and balancing that against demand being generated at the retail location. It would be very difficult for a human to process that at the speed that's required to serve those retail locations. And what's interesting is that the one of the first things that was done was improve the vectors of the AMRs themselves, meaning that there was so much time lost with the AMR stopping and pausing for other AMRs, that was one of the first things we attacked was vector analysis and optimization, and that yielded somewhere close to 30% improvement in the time. So I mean, this is an example of machine learning and AI that can make those decisions real time based on this pattern recognition and augmenting what the humans wish they could do. So I'll go back to the analogy that I used back in the sessions, which is think of AI as the Iron Man suit, right? It can do those computational tasks and really augment the human that really needs that decision intelligence.
All right, excellent, thank you. So we're gonna move on, and Kris and Wendy will get your feedback in the next one, and probably come back. One of the things that we kind of talked about briefly was the value, right? So there's value in the automation that Parthiv talked about, and in the decision making that Sachin talked about. And so when we're going back to December, one of the key things we did talk about in our second session was the idea of realizing value. This is where we realize value from product development to across the product life cycle, to leveraging where AI and humans fit together around decision making and those critical challenges. One of the things we did get feedback on from people was, how do you really connect with your leadership to explain the value of AI? And where's it going to come from? We know there's an investment here. How do we get that message across clearly? And so as we think about that, to build off of where we just were, how do we talk about the value of AI? And so before we get there, however, one of the things that was also clear that came through was you can't just jump to AI without having a strong foundation. And we did talk a little bit about data governance and data literacy and AI governance and AI literacy and how that all fits together. So let's spend a little bit of time on governance and literacy and why that is so critical. And then let's talk a little bit about value. So Sachin, go back to you real quick on literacy and governance and how that fits in and why that is so important to focus on. And you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, I mean, this is a topic that's near and dear to me, in the sense that data literacy and governance are ultimately crucial for the effective and, I would say, responsible use of AI. Having a data literacy program in place ensures that all the individuals understand how to interpret, analyze, and utilize data correctly, and enabling that decision making that I talked about earlier, and really kind of fostering this culture of that values data-driven insights. And you gotta be able, you build trust with that when you're able to drive that. Data governance to me is really kind of establishing the framework, and I think the formula could be a little different for every company's culture, but you really kind of build this framework for managing the quality, the data, the security, the privacy, compliance, and ensuring that that data that they're using for that analysis is accurate, accessible to the people that need it, and in a lot of, I would say in most cases, used in an ethical manner where you're not building in biases that affect those outcomes from AI. And I think you got to kind of use them together to as I mentioned, to mitigate those risks around bias or data breaches, regulatory violations, and ultimately building that trust and transparency behind the AI systems, because a lot of the clients I work with are just very skeptical because they don't know what happens in this black box called AI, right? So I think, data literacy and governance go a long way towards ensuring and, building that trust. So I think ultimately, strong data literacy and governance, underpin trustworthy AI, and that's what will accelerate innovation and organizational adoption.
Great, good insights. Before I ask for feedback from the panel, I will mention tomorrow we have a MLC Decision Compass call for our data mastery, analytics, and governance group, and the topic will be data literacy. So if anybody is interested in diving in more, please join us tomorrow. Anybody want to share any comments on literacy and governance before we talk more about value?
Well, I just wanted. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Wendy.
Well, I just wanted to piggyback off something Sachin said about the importance of AI literacy. Those of you that remember my talk, I highlighted that even people who are seemingly similar in their experience and comfort and experience with technology may not be in the same place in terms of their comfort with AI solutions and systems. And so and I told the story about a family member who had a very different response to riding in a Waymo vehicle, self-driving car than I did, even though we had very similar life experience, background, and education. So I think that just is another reason why AI literacy is so important, because people are coming from wildly different places in terms of their comfort level as it relates to AI.
Great point. Kris?
Yeah, and I just wanted to build off Sachin's comments here and just say, not only is it important to build trust in the AI model itself and using good data, but you're going to need it to justify these projects at the start and even at the end to prove that the project demonstrated its return on investment, right? So we need good data. We need the right data. We need to know how to expose that data, how to interpret that data. And without it, you're going to end up creating problems for yourselves. You're going to have to spend more time doing the manual work, gathering the data to justify the programs, or you run the risk really kind of in relying on faulty assumptions potentially.
That's a great point. And glad you talked about ROI, because I think that is going to lead into our next question, which is how do we think about ROI? How do we think about these investments? Is it project by project? Is it larger? How should companies, especially as you're starting out, tackle this question with their leadership team of why should we be investing in this technology and these tools? Wendy, we'll start with you on this.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think a lot of our audience members have heard me talk about the levels of AI value creation, with operational efficiency being the first rung in the ladder, if you will. The next rung being revenue creation, or accretive revenue. There we go. And the next one being customer engagement, and then the pièce de résistance being competitive advantage. And even though we put operational efficiency as the first rung in the ladder, it doesn't mean that you should skip it. I think the important thing is, in most cases, your ROI for operational efficiency projects are probably not going to be substantive enough to justify a holistic AI tool, technology, and people investment. You have to move to those higher order value creation opportunities, but it's a great place to start to learn and become proficient with AI tools and technologies in your organization, both from an IT and a technology perspective, but also from an end user. Sachin made the comment that a lot of times end users don't trust AI models and solutions because they feel like black boxes. If you start with more operational efficiency focused use cases, but always with the end goal of moving higher in the value chain, you're going to bring your user base along with you to drive the adoption that you need for the ROI at the higher level.
That's a great point. Parthiv, anything to add to that?
No, I completely agree. No, in fact, I would add that as we work with our clients, right, we always tell them that there is a journey from operating efficiency to even change in business models on the top end, right, where you look at different revenue streams and so forth. But consistently, as we go through this journey, we recommend a holistic reinvention approach. And what I mean by that is looking at business function, whether it's planning or manufacturing and so forth, right? But look at end-to-end business functions and processes and take a reinvention or reimagination approach so that you can identify here and now opportunities, use cases that will deliver, as Wendy says, those operational efficiency, but then have a view towards capabilities that will drive the change in business model. In fact, I would add one more thing, that once you have that view, we talked about data being essential early on. It would allow to build the right data model, which would allow speed to value for the overall value generation plan, right? But to us, that or to me, the reinvention or the reimagination of the functions is critical to bring that story together.
Excellent. Great point. Kris, anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with both Parthiv and Wendy. I frame it a little bit differently. In the way I kind of look at value creation, the number one way I would encourage people to look at it is more from what Wendy called accretive revenue generation. This tends to be the reason why businesses exist, right? You are in business to make a product or provide a service. And so if you can go back and tie whatever you're doing to that, you stand the risk of being able to get that approved, find the right ROI to justify it. That does assume that there is sufficient demand there. And so oftentimes we'll kind of also look at kind of the cost impact. That's a very easy way to kind of justify projects, because whether you're in a down market or an up market, cost always matters. The problem with cost is just not quite as good on the ROI as creating that accretive revenue. The other ways of kind of looking at it are more of a risk aversion. And here, if you're going to kind of go approach it this way, you really need to understand kind of what your organization will sign off on in terms of a benefit, quote unquote benefit. Because different people interpret that a little bit differently. Measuring risk reduction tends to be a little bit harder to do, So getting buy-in around that can be a little bit more difficult. And then certainly kind of creating new demand is another place you can go. If you can add value by creating a new service, a new source of revenue generation, there's a really unlimited potential there. But again, that can be hard to sell. There's a lot of assumptions and research that needs to go into that. So really, if you really want to make and move the mark and trying to create an ROI and justify it, I encourage people to go back to things that are either going to impact that P&L or go back and really help the company advance their strategy. So if you can kind of tie it to those two things, you really stand a good chance of being able to justify a project in AI or essentially any type of investment.
Gotcha. Good point. Adam or Sachin, anything to add on kind of this question of value?
Yeah, I think it was beautifully articulated by everyone. I guess from a practical example standpoint, I would say with our automotive customers, which is the lion's share of our customers, they're trying to save seconds off of their operational efficiency. And what, interestingly enough, happens in the process of that is they actually improve some other strategic areas of impact. So it definitely is not looking at it in one dimension, but also looking at other areas. So as you shave off time to from an operational efficiency standpoint, you also are improving potentially your time to market, your competitive advantage, some of these other areas. So I think all these frameworks, both by Wendy and Kris, really are the ways to look at. But I would look at it with killing multiple birds with one stone kind of a approach. But again, starting with the framework is really, really important, because there is no favorable winds for the sailor who doesn't know where he's headed.
Excellent point. I think that's a great insight in terms of, AI, it's not a single solution for a single problem. This is going to be able to solve in multiple areas, and the value is going to come from piecing things together, which is going to require that strategic leadership insight. We're going to dive into that in our next area, which is around the human dimension. One of the key themes that we heard when we talked about humans, we know there's a lot of involvement on the factory floor and with the workforce of what it means to them. But a key message was, what does it mean for leadership? How does it tie to lean manufacturing and lean leadership, ecosystems, and working with leaders across your supply chain, working on AI ethics and regulations, for example. But this constant thread was around leadership. And it was no longer enough. I think Wendy said it well during the conference, and she said it actually last year as well, or 2 years ago now. If you haven't started, start now. And it's no longer enough to just start as a company. You as an individual, especially as a leader, have to start now. And so let's talk a little bit about that. As we go forward, what does this mean for our future leaders? What does leadership look like tomorrow for AI-centric factories? And how do leaders need to start to evolve themselves? Sachin, let's start with you, and then Kris will go to you next.
Yeah, and if I may, I'm going to use a slightly different example, but I think manufacturing can learn from some other industries that have actually built entire operating models with a heavy reliance on AI. For those of you that are into fashion, you may have heard of a company called Stitch Fix, for example. And it's a beautiful case study in the sense that they started with humans analyzing extensive customer data, including style preferences, body measurements, purchase history, and so on. And what they did was they started slowly building algorithms to not replace the human, but process that information to predict what that individual style preferences would be, and give that to these human stylists to provide better outcomes for their clients. And I think you can look this up publicly, but I think it had somewhere around a 40 to 50% improvement in their sell-through to existing clients, and because it started looking at things like inventory management, started pulling in forecasting from fashion trends, and looking at supply chain information. I think there's a lesson to be learned there, in the sense that it's a good case study in, getting more value out of what you already have. I mentioned this a little bit, in our session, but I think, there's some lessons to be learned in the manufacturing environment from this extensive use of AI and machine learning that changed their entire business model, if you will. And I think we can all learn from that in manufacturing as well.
That's an interesting point. Kris.
So when I look at the impact to leadership, the AI's impact, I don't see the core of leadership changing. I mean, we're still going to need people who are great communicators, who know how to motivate the organization, who have high emotional intelligence, things of that nature. What I do see is certain skills probably becoming a little more important, and so therefore, they've become a little more coveted in the marketplace, and a little more investment put into them. So things like decision making, problem solving, adaptability. We're going to be dealing with a lot more data coming from a lot more different sources, and it's becoming actually a lot faster. So knowing how to draw conclusions, make decisions, parse things out, adapt your workforce to that is going to become a very critical skill. And so we're going to be needing people who are comfortable in uncomfortable situations, to kind of put it bluntly here. I do think there'll still be continue kind of trend or people who are open-minded around technology and a little more tech savvy. But the other thing I really see changing in leadership is really, leaders who are able to engage people and meet them where they are. And that's going to become one of the most critical skills out there, right? If you think about the old days, we used to go out to the floor, it's face-to-face conversation, you're dealing with stale data. Now you're interfacing with people on cell phones, text message, direct message, right? We're remote versus in person. You've got multi-generations, right? And so being able to apply those core leadership skills and reach all people to make use of the data, the actions that need to take place, I think that's really what is going to be critical and really looked upon for development in the future.
Great insights. Adam, anything to add?
I would fully echo what Kris just said, in particular around starting by addressing any skills gap from a leadership perspective. And that includes things, as Kris mentioned, like emotional intelligence, data and AI literacy. There's a lot of leaders that are great leaders, but they don't have that one key building block around data, AI, and literacy. And so these are going to be unicorns that are going to be very, very coveted and sought after. And I think once you address that skills gap, you need someone who is exceptional at building trust and reducing that resistance within the organization. And Kris already said that, but I just can't overemphasize that enough. And then I'd say the other skill is one that's also sometimes underrated, is aligning organizations around those goals and making sure that that it's clear across the board, the communication is clear and it's crisp, and it's really understood why we're doing what we're doing from an AI perspective. I think we need to take a lot of that mystery out, and so that hands-on type of leadership is going to be absolutely crucial in the future.
Actually, one thing we've heard before is an important part of AI is transparency. And I think what you just mentioned is it's not enough for AI to be transparent. Our leaders need to be transparent as well. So Wendy,
Well
final
put.
word on this one.
Yeah, one of the things that I tell executives a lot in my role is don't underestimate the value of using AI tools as a thought partner. It's not just what needs to change about me as a leader or you as a leader and executive in manufacturing, but how can you take advantage of these new tools to get experience via the tool that you may not have had in real life. Ask questions like, what am I missing? What do other companies like me think or do or believe or see? So using it to augment your experience base is a really valuable skill in this new world of leadership with AI.
Excellent. And I think one thing we're going to explore within the program and the Future of Manufacturing project is how can we help manufacturers with that and help give people that experience. Given the time, we're going to hop into our final conversation here, which is reimagining the factory. So we ended the day was saying, there's multiple things we could look at. There's fully automated factories. There's going to be augmented factories. We're now hearing things about micro factories. It's impacting material development. It's impacting a lot of different things. It's impacting, what we think about with ESG and sustainability and which one comes first. Is it sustainability driving AI or the other way around? Or, as Adam said, does this all kind of fit together in some unique ways? So our first question is, as we think about the factories of the future, one of those big challenges is still the culture of AI acceptance. And how do we start to approach that? So it's great to say we're going to design our factories this way, but our workers need to be able to be willing to work in those factories and embrace it. So Parthiv, let's start with you in terms of how do we help our workers and our workforce be ready to embrace this culture of AI partnership?
Yeah, so we talked about AI awareness and education earlier, but I also see that there is an evolution from what we call, I guess, capabilities of, for example, using knowledge graph to augment AI or using AI to augment workers. So I think there are stages of AI augmentation, AI working with the workers, right? And eventually, AI driving most of the operations, if you will, right? So if you look at the, evolution of, again, I used the crawl, walk, run approach, right? I think there is an opportunity, or there is a play already in motion to drive the enablement of the factory floor and the workers, right? Kind of bringing the vision of connected or AI-enabled worker to reality, right? But AI will play a role from assistant to augmentation to an equal partner, if you will, right? And again, we see this happening as we speak.
All right, excellent. Kris, what are you seeing?
I think it goes back to some of the basic change management and really where to focus your attention, right? Workers need to be involved in the decision. They need to be brought along. They need to understand what's in it for them. Probably a different topic, but we got to stop saying things like lights out manufacturing, right? That doesn't really give me that warm, fuzzy feeling if I'm a factory worker that I have a future here, right? So we really need to kind of look at it from their perspective. We need to demystify it. We need to work on creating trust with the data and just engage them in the process. Stop making it overly complicated. I mean, if you go back, look at the forms of AI we've talked about. AI, ML, we talked about agentic AI, we talked about generative AI, the causal AI. Think about that from the worker's perspective. It gets confusing. I mean, we just got to keep it simple and really just work on engaging them and just kind of eat the elephant one bite at a time, so to speak.
Good perspective. Sachin, anything to add to this?
Yeah, I think I largely agree with everything that's been said. Ultimately, really love what Kris said, right? This whole notion of lights out factories is something we gotta stop using, because ultimately what we want the worker to feel is that the AI is helping them do their jobs more effectively, more efficiently, with better quality, right? So it's a tool to be used. The other aspect of it too is, especially in some of the regulated industries, there's a ton of knowledge that exists in the workforce, and we have to, harness that. And this is already happening, to Parthiv's comments earlier. We're seeing lots of manufacturers that are tapping into decades of knowledge that the line side workers have, in terms of, stoppages or alarms and the resolution to get that line functioning again. So I would say we just need to work better on our messaging so that the operators and the line side workers come along for the ride versus, looking at it as this is going to come after my job.
Wendy, Adam, anything to add?
Well, I was just going to add that, in addition to reimagining the actual factory floor and the way the humans interact with the machines in it, I think an important part of reimagining our factories of the future is rethinking the way that we collect, store, and use data. We need to reimagine our data. And the important thing is, humans do better with context. We always make better decisions when we have more context. The same thing applies to AI and to AI solutions. The more context that is available to be gleaned from the data in a computer consumable way, the better. I see with a lot of my clients, their data that they're feeding into AI and Gen AI solutions, it's structured for human consumption. It is not well structured for computer consumption. And so I do think there is going to have to be some work and energy invested in rethinking, is your data AI ready? And when you're reimagining your factories for the future.
And I think that goes back to even our earlier conversation on the ROI and the idea of data governance and data literacy, right? It's the data literacy is not only is it understandable by humans, but is it understandable by machines? And how do we rethink those investments at that early level? As we finish up here, a couple questions that have popped up in the chat that I want to just get to quickly. And if there's more questions, we have a little bit of time here. Adam, one of the things you had mentioned in the beginning was the idea of partners that have capabilities, right? There's lots of different partners out there. How should manufacturers think about their partnerships? Is it looking for a single partner with a full suite of capabilities, or finding partners that have individual pieces and kind of building your own individual ecosystem of partners to work with in this AI space?
That's a great question. I don't think there's a one size fits all approach to that. It really depends on where you are in your digital transformation journey, to just use that buzzword. I think that, really it's all about defining the problem sets and the magnitude of those problem sets, and then mapping those to the right partners that can get you there. And that really, I think something that is oftentimes underestimated is the role of early wins in getting things incrementally improved over time, and then in addition to that, communicating those wins and across the board, including people in the collaboration of those wins. There's something that it does for morale when you really understand very clearly what the purpose of why you're doing what you're doing. We should be asking that all the time in our conversations, even as vendors with manufacturers, and vice versa as well. So that's what I would say largely about that. I spent 10 years at Nokia during those tumultuous years as part of a startup that was acquired through them, and I went all the way through the acquisition and kind of the eventual breakup with Microsoft. And when I heard Dave talk about Grove's Law and this concept of only the paranoid survive, Nokia had a little bit of a different philosophy, which was around paranoid optimism. And the concept is really, really interesting. I won't elaborate on it now, but it's kind of self-explanatory. And I think that the way you imbue optimism in an organization is, again, by having those early wins, including people in the collaboration, and making sure you communicate very clearly about those wins across the organization.
All right, thank you. Anyone else want to add anything on finding the right partners, and how do you think about your partnerships in this space?
The only thing I would echo is that I think Adam's right, that in order to take advantage of the innovations happening, there is no one partner per se, but it's at the same time important to be able to stitch those innovations and those partnerships together to drive the value that we discuss about, right? So there is an integration thread, but I think you need to be able to leverage multiple partners out there.
Gotcha. And I know there's a question there of how do we identify the right partners? I don't think we're able to get to that today, but we can certainly share some thoughts offline of how do you identify and find the right partners. In the last few minutes that we have here, I'm going to give you a chance for final reflections. And so we're going to kind of go back in reverse order here. Sachin, we'll start with you on some final reflections.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I'm very optimistic. I think, my reflections are that, we've seen more happen in the last 2 to 3 years than we saw in the decade prior. So to me, I'm very optimistic about how manufacturing companies are starting to look at AI and defining very targeted use cases that have very measurable value and return in a short period of time. And I think, to build on Adam's statement, there is no one size shoe fits all approach, right? I think you have to look at, prioritizing your use cases and then selecting the, built for purpose partners that can enable those use cases. So, for me, the next 5 to 10 years are going to be very interesting to see, how much we can advance AI in terms of, and I wouldn't call it autonomous manufacturing, but, let's say delivering more autonomy to, workers, more autonomy to how lines operate, more autonomy in terms of, decision insights. So, I would say, just get started, right? It doesn't have to be a moonshot. I think you can take small incremental steps that demonstrate value and then build upon it, but you have to get started to do that.
Great. Excellent point. Parthiv.
Yeah, so I guess I will take the cue and not call it lights out manufacturing. But having said that, I think the vision of intelligent and autonomous operations that we discussed in December, I think is real and it's happening. And the pace at which it's happening, I think there's a lot of talk about people focus on digital core. I think now it's the time for AI-enabled digital core to make that vision happening. And I think the pace is only going to increase.
Kris.
So I think about this as, probably the most exciting time to be in manufacturing. I think AI serves as that one thing that everybody can look at and really see the potential and start to think outside the box. And they see it as a tool and a mechanism to deliver value and faster. And so I'm really excited for what the future of manufacturing looks like and the rapid pace of change. I think it'll be interesting. I think leaders are going to have to really figure out how far they can go, how fast they can go to really continue to challenge their organization and push. But I'd be interested in seeing how businesses evolve and how some of the mid-size and the smaller size businesses really start to grow and take incremental change to this whole nother level where they've reinvented themselves, they've created competitive advantage, and they've double, triple, whatever it is in size.
Excellent. Thank you. Wendy.
Sure. Well, you're not going to be surprised by my first reflection, and it's if you haven't already started on your AI, I know Steve's laughing. If you haven't already started, please don't wait. I cannot emphasize how fast this technology is moving. 18 months ago, we were all talking about large language models. Last summer, the conversation had shifted and large language models were passé. We were talking about agents. And now in January of 2025, we're not talking about agents that much anymore. We're talking about agentics turning into physical AI. So AI in the physical world, just like Parthiv was mentioning. And that in manufacturing space is going to manifest itself in AI-driven robotics. So if you haven't already started with the simpler AI technologies, you are behind. Do not wait. Get started today.
All right. Excellent. And Adam.
Would it be fair just to mic drop on what Wendy just said? Because I'm really not going to add anything significant, to be honest. Thanks. That was great.
No, I appreciate that. Again, thanks everybody. There are some good questions in the Q&A here. We will get to those offline. We will share some answers. I'll be sharing them with the panelists so we can provide some answers and some commentary. And we will include that in some emails when we send the follow-ups to this call. I want to thank everybody, the panelists. I have a couple of slides to share as we close out to remind people of upcoming events. So if we go to the next slide real quick here, we do have our Manufacturing Leadership Awards. Our deadline has been pushed out to the 31st, but that is it. So this is a great chance to honor achievements of yourself, your teams, your projects, your partners for advances in Manufacturing 4.0. Please see the link below and get your nominations in. If you have questions about them, please reach out to the MLC and we will help you answer any questions. It's a great chance to, again, recognize teams for their excellent work they're doing. The next slide, please. One of our big activities within the MLC are our plant tours. These are chances to see Manufacturing 4.0 in practice with some of the partners and members of the MLC. We have two very exciting plant tours coming up. One in April in Monterrey, Mexico, where Schneider Electric will be talking about leveraging technologies to build the Lighthouse Smart Factory of the future. Great opportunity to see what they're doing and where they've been able to drive advancements. And then in August in Illinois, United Scrap Metal will be talking about enabling technologies to drive sustainability improvements in manufacturing. There will be additional plant tours coming. And if you are interested in providing a plant tour yourself, please reach out to the MLC. We'd love to have more opportunities for people to share what they're doing. Finally, Rethink, which is our keynote or keystone presentation, keystone event of the year, is coming. There we go. Coming this June. Registration is open. This is also includes the leadership gala, the leadership awards presentations at our gala. So great event, great chance to see case studies, think tanks, panels, and really continue to learn from one another. So see the QR code or the link below, and please join us for this fantastic event. And finally, thank you again for joining us. Please reach out to the MLC, to myself, to our speakers, with any additional questions you have. As we said, this is an ongoing project, so we're not ending it today. You will see more activities around the manufacturing factory of the future, AI-centric focus for the year, throughout the year. So look forward to more information. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. We hope you all have a wonderful day. Stay warm, stay safe, and we'll talk to everybody soon.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks all.
Thanks all.